CatSynth TV.
Hey everybody, CatSynth TV. And today we are looking at News from Home, a 1977 experimental documentary by Chantal Akerman. In particular, we are going to look at some of the locations in 1970s New York featured in the film. But first, please do subscribe to this channel for more cultural content coming out regularly. And please do consider supporting us via Patreon or Ko-Fi. Links in the description below. And if you like what you see here, please give it a thumbs up and share with your friends. News from Home is composed of long shots and scenes of 1970s New York, overlaid with a voiceover of Akerman reading letters written to her by her mother during her first day in New York in the earlier part of the decade. Although it's Akerman's voice, it's the words of a mother concerned about a child, seemingly adrift in the gritty New York of the early 1970s. We only hear one side of the conversation, and indeed there may have only been one side. It mixes concern with the prosaic ups and downs of the family's life and fortunes back in Belgium. But if this one-sided dialogue holds the film together, it is really the New York of 1976, which is when the film was shot, that is the real star. The letters may have been love notes from mother to daughter, but the film is a love note to a unique city at a unique time in all its gritty beauty. Now I recognize many, if not most, of the locations used in this film. Some from my youth, and others extrapolated from my experience in the city in more recent years. The main locations featured in the film are TriBeCa, Hell's Kitchen, Times Square, Midtown, the Bronx, and the southern tip of Manhattan. Connecting them are scenes from the subways and city streets. The sequence of shots switches among the locations and does not suggest a single route or itinerary, but rather it forms what is termed a psychogeographic map, or the relationship of geographic locations to a subject's emotions and memories, which seems an apt way to consider the film. One of the more recognizable views is 10th Avenue, heading north from Chelsea into Hell's Kitchen. We see the entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel at 30th Street, a sign for 374th 10th Avenue, which helps orient us as we continue north, passing the Port Authority bus terminal and into Hell's Kitchen, which still features older low-rise buildings to this day. The subway stations are also useful guide points as we move through the landscape of the film, as they haven't changed very much over time. During a long shot, looking out from a subway car early in the film, we see signs for Christopher Street and then Houston Street. This suggests that we are riding on the 1 train. Later on, we arrive at Times Square Station. We start on the platform, presumably for the 1, 2, and 3 trains, then emerge into the labyrinthine corridors connecting various parts of the station complex, including the long walkway to the Port Authority bus terminal. Ultimately, we emerge onto the platform with the S train, or Times Square shuttle. Later on, we are again in the subway car as it emerges from underground into the light. And then we have a long shot looking out of the train on an elevated track towards a gritty scene of brick buildings and vacant lots, passing a station along the way. I was able to identify this as the 170th Street station on the 4 train over Jerome Avenue. In addition to the station placard, I was able to determine that we are looking eastward along Elliott Place and Marcy Place, up towards the Grand Concourse. It would seem the subway segments are a connected trip from the West Village on the 1 train to Times Square and then via the shuttle to Grand Central, and then finally on the 4 train into the Bronx. This may or may not be how it was filmed, but it does make sense. Some of the surface streetscapes are more difficult to identify because of the changes over nearly half a century. The initial scenes are unmistakably TriBeCa, with the cobblestone streets that extend to this day and are likely views along Greenwich and Hudson streets. But the buildings and landmarks have changed. We see images with the elevated West Side Highway, closed in the early 1970s and then demolished in the 1980s. But it does help orient us. I was able to find one exact location along Harrison Street looking east towards Hudson Street. And I'm pretty sure that initial shot is nearby along Staple Street. We also have scenes from a bustling Midtown, which stand in contrast to the quiet, narrow streets of TriBeCa. I was able to read the street sign on 46th and notice signs for the M1, M2, and M3 buses. From this, we can identify that this is the area right around 46th Street and 5th Avenue. We do also have a shot that looks south on 5th Avenue, with the twin towers of the original World Trade Center visible in the distance. This may in fact be the first time a major landmark appears in this film. The twin towers also feature in the final 10-minute shot of the film, where we look back at the tip of southern Manhattan from the back of the Staten Island Ferry, with the view receding into the misty the atmosphere. There is perhaps no more poignant juxtaposition between the New York I grew up with and the New York of today than the changes in this view, which is still very beautiful but bears the memories, good and bad, of the decades since Akerman made her film. And it is indeed the connection between my own experience and her lingering, affectionate views of the city in all its complexity with no style or artifice that draws me so strongly to this film. Do you have thoughts about News from Home or other films by Chantal Akerman? Please let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to CatSynth TV.